like to call to order the May Finance Committee meeting. If everybody please be seated. Got a lot of people here today. Y'all must think we got money to give away or something. we have no money, so y'all can leave now. All right. As always, we will take up the consent agenda first. Are there any items anyone would want pulled from consent? Scipio.
C7.
C7? Mm-hmm. Okay.
C10.
C10 for Mr. McIntosh.
C11.
C11.
And I would like to have
Yes, ma'am.
some of the same ones they've said, 10, 11, 15, 16, and 22.
15, 16, and 22.
Mine is for information to be
That's
brief.
fine.
But so people can know.
C13.
C13. Any others? If I could get a motion to approve the balance.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the balance as a consent item. All in favor, please vote accordingly. Yeah.
How about we raise our hands?
We're going to get here or not, guys?
It's not working.
We'll just do it.
Yeah, like we did.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, that is approved. We will go down and I will do them in numerical order. We will start with C7.
Item C7, resolution authorizing a loan assumption and subordination of financing for Kensington Village Apartments located in the East Ward.
Ms. Scipio, you requested this one.
Yes.
Would you like a quick presentation by the staff?
Yes.
C7.
Good afternoon.
This is,
Good afternoon.
Kensington Village, I believe. Yes.
Yes.
All right. We can get a 2-minute presentation. Everybody will be informed.
Yes, sir. So Kensington Village was acquired through a HUD foreclosure in 2005, and the city made the acquisition and transferred title to TFG Forest Ridge Company. And as part of our development agreement with the transfer, the organization was to do a rehab of 142-unit rental property. You'll see the sources of funding that supported that rehabilitation, which included 2 loans from the city. The rehab was completed in 2009. In 2010, the smaller of the loans was converted to a contribution to capital, which essentially was a forgivable loan. So that part has gone away. And then what is left is the remaining $500,000 that was in bond funds. So we used CDBG for $249,583 of the loan. Well, the total of that amount was for the conversion to capital and forgivable. 50,000 of that 249 was CDBG. 199,583 was housing finance. And then the remaining $500,000 loan was housing finance funds. So twice those loans were renegotiated, and mortgage payments were deferred. And but each time, both in 2011 as well as in 2018, when we did the refinance, the property owner made a $100,000 payment. So the current balance on the loan is $300,000, which is proposed to be assumed by the new buyer. And the new buyer is a 501c3, a community development corporation, and it usually works in smaller towns and cities in the southeast mainly, and they do multifamily, single-family development, property management, weatherization, and resident services. And so the development itself has maintained a high occupancy, has been well maintained. We've had no problems with the property or its management over the years. And we have both the current owner as well as the proposed buyer here with us today, who can also share some remarks and comments about the proposed transaction.
So we're simply allowing the note to be transferred.
Assumed by the new buyer.
Assumed, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Scipio, do you have any questions, comments?
No, I do have a comment. I think that whenever we go into agreement with anyone, that we, as a council and the community, probably need to see who they are and hear what might be on their hearts. And I would like to invite the proposed owner to come and bring whatever remarks he would like to the council,
Okay.
well, at least to this committee.
That's fine. Is anyone from Community Housing Partners of Christiansburg, Virginia here? If you'll please come forward, sir. If you'll state your name and address for the record, and you can make some comments, whatever you'd like.
Sure. My name is Jeffrey Reed. I'm the president of all the Community Housing Partners. We're headquartered in Christiansburg, Virginia. We have properties in Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida. We have about 105 apartment complexes, own about 6,000 units. We're a nonprofit. We're not sellers. In the 20 years that I've been there, we've sold 2 properties. So we buy and hold and maintain properties.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone? Ms. Burke?
I just need to make a comment. I know we're talking to a proposed owner to want to be. The former owner is here, and he was the person, Ms. Scipio, Councilwoman, since you're new, was committed to making sure that the property was well managed and that it was a very nice place to live and had good management there, from the outside to the inside. He gave his commitment. And a few minutes ago, I reminded him when I saw him in the hall there that he had kept his promise. I think taxpayers can appreciate when we spend our money that we spend it a way that people will be stewards of it like we are. So mine to you would be, now how committed are you to do what's really right by people who live there?
Right. We've been in business for 46 years. We're committed to all of our properties. We don't manage them in a way that we are forced to sell them. So it's our goal to manage those the best we can. This property is very nice. It's our intention to keep it that way.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. McIntosh?
I got a question for staff. What are the income levels in this project? Do you know what percent AMI?
They are all affordable.
Okay, affordable can mean different things. Do we have, is it a 80% below? Or?
80% below.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, I'd just like to say I was very impressed when I spoke to the proposed buyer. I like the fact that they have worked in low-income neighborhoods to bring about wonderful-looking housing, not just what could be, but they look at lifting it up and bringing the neighbors up. And they have worked with even housing authorities.
Okay.
And might be interested in some other projects here in our community. So I certainly endorse this moving forward.
Okay. Can I get a motion? Ms. Burke?
Yeah, I want to move.
Ms. Burke?
I move for
Ms. Burke has moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Be sure that everybody push the buttons now.
No, where's my
In
hand?
a second. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Everybody hang on here. Okay, everybody please vote.
It didn't come up on the screen.
The screen just went blank.
Right. Screen's not working.
I'm assuming, all in favor, raise your hand. That was approved. It'll come up at some point. It looks like it's rebooting right now. Thank you very much. That's C7. We will now go to C10. If the secretary please read that.
Item C10, resolution awarding purchase order for camera systems.
Mr. McIntosh, you asked for this one to be approved.
Yep.
Would you like a little presentation?
I would.
Okay.
Please.
Whoever would like to present it?
You want a presentation?
Yes.
Please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Steve Tolley, and I have the privilege of serving as the captain with the Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division. A little bit of background on our interview recording system. That system was originally installed in 2007. We use that, the interview recording system that we're discussing today to record all interviews that occur by detectives in the Criminal Investigations Division. The system was originally purchased in 2007 and was upgraded in 2012. There's been no maintenance or upgrade to the system other than just small repairs since 2012. As part of the building renovations, we began to consider the cost of moving that current system and learned that that would be about $25,000. The problem with the system is it's getting ready to age out. The system has a lifespan of about 5 to 7 years before it needs to be replaced, and as I said, the last upgrade to the system was 2012. So rather than spend $25,000 to move a system that we would have to likely replace in the next few months to a year, we researched upgrading the system as part of the move.
Okay. Mr. McIntosh?
My question goes to more to the vendor.
Yes, sir.
And there have been some concerns expressed about their system of locking in their clients and not leaving an upgrade path out of their product without an exorbitant fee structure, kind of like cell phone operators have been known to do. And I am familiar with that from the tech industry. That is kind of that's a way a lot of people conduct business. So I'm concerned that have we gotten what we've paid for with, this is the company that used to be Taser, right?
It is, yes, sir. And I'm sorry, I know as we've exchanged the emails, Councilmember McIntosh, and yes, this is Axon, formerly known as Taser. This is a company we've had a working relationship with since we started adding the body-worn camera and the Taser system to our equipment package. So that dates back to about 2011. Because of the checks and balances that we have in place with the city, when it comes to purchasing, when it comes to reviewing of our contracts, when it comes to maintaining our contracts, everything that we do in conjunction with both our city attorney's office, public safety attorney Lori Sykes is assisting us with all of our contracts when it comes to Axon or any vendor that we use. And she has carefully reviewed those as they come forward, but also in response to the email that was brought to your attention. We can't basically comment on what went on in California with that particular organization, but we certainly know that when it comes to how we're spending the services that we're receiving, there are several lines of checks and balances in place to make sure that A, we are following in line with the contract, B, the vendor is in keeping with the contract, and C, that we are not paying for services that we are not receiving. As such, I don't know how detailed you were able to get through that particular, the article in there. It's clearly stated that there was some type of agreement between the agency in California and Axon. But when you looked at the two contracts, Axon never said in their contract what was said in the agency's contract. The way our contracts are written, in everything that we do, we always say that regardless of how we have it written here, and we try to cover everything, that at the end of the day, our contract will always supersede the contract that the vendor is supplying. So if we have two, which in some cases we do, then it's going to be the City of Winston-Salem's contract that's binding, and we have that in writing.
Have they met our expectations in terms of costs over the period of time? I know since I've been on council, we started the body camera things, and I know one of the concerns there was, are we contracting for enough data storage? Because once you hit those limits of data storage, that's when you get whacked. And sometimes companies will underestimate what you need to get. So my question is, has that performance been what we expected? Are we paying any more than we thought we would up front?
Yes, sir. So basically, when it comes to our body-worn cameras that we're using in the field, we have what's called a public safety package, which is unlimited storage, and that's included in our package. Of course, we'll have to go on a different platform, if you will, still with evidence.com as the platform. We'll still have to have a separate contractual agreement because of the amount of data that will go along with what we're talking about with our interview rooms. It'll be different. But to answer your question, we have been satisfied because we do have that unlimited storage.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Larson.
I understand that this is for 7 interview rooms. Is that what the request is for, 7 units?
Yes, sir, it is.
And is this all of our interview rooms? Does this completely replace our existing system, or does this supplement our interview recording devices?
It would completely replace it.
Complete replacement?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? If not, can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve. Oops, somebody beat me to
We
it.
have a motion and a second, and
Get your trigger finger.
there we are. If everybody please vote. We do have a motion and a second. That is approved. We will now go to C11. I'm going to keep going, folks. We got a lot to do, and we'll get the computer to catch up with.
Item C11, resolution ratifying action taken on March 8, 2019 regarding authorizing the Winston-Salem Community Development Department to submit an application requiring a $75,000 match contribution to the Grounded Solutions Network for the For Everyone Home initiative.
Ms. Adams, would you like a
Yes,
presentation?
a short presentation to update the committee and the community as to what we've been working on.
Ms. Newman, if you could find your way up.
Yes, sir.
This is C11.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, members of the council.
Good afternoon.
Marla Newman, Community Development Director. We came to you previously about an opportunity with an organization called the Grounded Solutions Network. And, okay, now the slides are not advancing. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. So back in March, we came to you with an opportunity that we discovered on March 6th that would provide a total value of $225,000 in technical assistance to help us with strategies and plans and policies to achieve long-term affordability and also to mitigate any potential threats of gentrification or something also called anti-displacement strategies. This particular opportunity was a competitive grant application nationally. Again, we discovered it on March 6th. The application deadline was on March 14th, so the following week. You all kindly gave us an opportunity to make application for that. That proposal also required that we contribute a $75,000 cash match. It was through Grounded Solutions Network, who are experts in community land trusts, shared equity home ownership models, and a lot of other policies and strategies about long-term affordability. Short version, found out that out of 32 cities across the nation, Winston-Salem was one of the 3 that was selected. The other 2 cities selected were Indianapolis, Indiana, and San Antonio, Texas. Great. And so we certainly appreciate having received the go-ahead to make the application, but inasmuch as that request was made to you all outside of the normal council's meeting schedule, of course, we need to come to you today to ask that you ratify that action that you took that has already started to bear fruit. I will add one of the other strong points about us pursuing that application was it would help us look at how we implemented some of the items and recommendations that were contained in the housing study and needs assessment that was delivered to us late last fall, and also helps us kind of crosswalk with the items that you all have identified as priorities in the updated strategic plan. So again, today we're asking that you ratify the approval you gave us to actually make the application, as well as our making that contribution of the $75,000 cash match and executing the necessary paperwork to implement the technical assistance engagement.
Any questions, comments?
Move for approval.
Second.
How long would it take them to do this?
The engagement is an 18-month engagement.
18 months, okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is for a $75,000 match, and we're very fortuitous that we've already been approved, so if everybody please vote.
150,000.
And one more comment,
yes, ma'am.
Chair. This works in tandem with our housing plan
Yes.
for the city. So anytime now staff knows to be able to go out and look for those grants that we only have to match, much like DOT or anything else,
yes.
then it's more to the good for us. But you remember, we had the study, but we needed another piece, which is the actions, and someone, consultants, to help us implement actions to that study. And this is part of that deal. And that's not to say there won't be others, but this is part of that.
Okay.
Okay?
We're going to get the results. There we go. We got them.
Thank you.
That is approved.
Thank you.
That's C11. The next one up is C13.
C13, resolution approving a contract change order with Bar Construction Incorporated in the amount of $650,000 for additional construction work for the renovation of Happy Hill Park, Phase 1, located in the East Ward.
I just have a question. You
Go
pulled
ahead.
it too, Ms. Burke?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just really wanted some update on it. It doesn't have to be the longest.
Okay. Mr. Preston, can you just give us a 1-minute update on what we're doing and where it stands?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Chairman. The construction out at Happy Hill is progressing very well now. Finally, the rain has stopped, so past month or so they are making good progress. Both buildings have started, the picnic pavilion and the pool house for the spray ground, and then this change order is for the running track to be added back into the project.
One other question. When will that be completed? I'm not in
The contract completion date is the end of this year, the end of 2019.
Ms. Adams, you have a comment?
Yes, and maybe I recorded this wrong, my notes. It read in the CARF that you're going to move some money from Winston Lake Phase 2. How will this affect Winston Lake Phase 2?
It will affect the master plan of Winston Lake Phase 2 shows some work being done on the southern side of the lake, so that work will not be done as part of Phase 2. It will also shrink the size of the boardwalk on the north side of the lake.
Have we, and council member, have we had community meetings to explain this to the community?
Yes, ma'am.
No, the actual design and footprint for the changes won't really change. It's just how we had walking trails that were going to be around the lake. We're just changing how they look to move this money so that we can have a competition track at Happy Hill Park. What we do know, we have at least 6 track and field clubs in the city, and they all go to meets outside of this city. We are going everywhere, whether it's to Charlotte, down to Norfolk, down to South Carolina. They also don't have training tracks here. So Happy Hill would be that addition, which was in the original plan, but the monies weren't there till we shifted it. We'll have this wonderful competition track that we could start having perhaps track meets here in Winston-Salem, which would be a wonderful event to have here. But no, the Winston Lake plan is not dramatically impacted by that shift of funds. It would just means that instead of having very wide walking trails around the track, they'll be a little smaller, but not the actual essence of the park improvements will still be there.
I was just going to say, the park is a little bit up as in the northeast ward, but it's not affected. And I'm sure the councilwoman has done what she needs to do for this to be proposed.
I just had a technical question about the track. Is it an 8-lane track or a 6-lane track? 8-lane.
8-lane.
Good. And that will help take some pressure off of the Haynes Park
That's
track
right.
as well. So looking forward to it.
Mr. Bessie, our track expert.
You just reminded me of the question. Does the budget include the cap on the track surface this time?
Yes.
Good, because that's part of the problem with the repeated cycle of deterioration at Haynes Park. As we tried to cheap out. Well, we didn't, but we discovered that
Someone did.
someone tried to cheap out. Thank you.
Okay, so this is, do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
I will not wear it out.
No, you won't. No, you won't.
What track do you use?
I have an app.
He has an app.
Nordic track.
All right, C13 is approved. We'll now go to C15. The Secretary, please read this one.
Item C15, resolution awarding contract for resurfacing city streets to APAC Atlantis Incorporated, Thompson Arthur Division.
Ms. Adams, I think I had you on here. Or Ms. Burke?
No, I asked for 16. Is this 16?
No, this is
15. Is this 15?
This is 15.
this is
I had that.
15.
I had that one.
Okay, excuse me, Ms. Burke. This
I
one's
just
yours.
wanted a little update on it.
Okay,
Who's to give that?
whoever would like to do it. Sam, if you give us about a 2-minute update, this is the road surfacing.
Yes, sir. Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, members of the City Council. Ma'am, this contract before you today is the Phase 1 of the 2018 bond resurfacing. So when staff met with each of you individually to go over your lists of streets that you'd like to see resurfaced and then agreed upon those, these were the priority streets that are included in this first bid for resurfacing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And also, I brought this up because a lot of people are complaining about what's happening with our infrastructure. But if we don't do this, we won't have good streets for us to use. And I went through North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia this past weekend, and they all are doing a lot of infrastructure. They are. On the highways as well as in the intercity. So I just wanted to make that update and tell our citizens to be patient.
Mr. Besson?
Yes, just a brief question. I always get asked this. What is the anticipated time window for this set of work, these streets?
Yes, sir. So this section of the contract requires that 60% of the work be completed by June of 2020, and I'm looking to our DOT director. She taught me well. And then the remainder before December.
Wait, 20 or 29?
2020. Okay. It would be very difficult to get that amount of work done before June of this year.
Do you have any way of knowing?
Mr. McCullough, why don't you come up here?
Ladies and gentlemen, Nate McCullough, Director of Transportation.
When are you going to have this done?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and Mayor Pro Tem Burke. The schedule is to have 60% of it completed by the end of this year, of December 2019, and the rest of it by June 2020. And then the second contract will be advertised in January so that completion will roll into 2020 for completion into 2021.
This pretty much takes us to June of 20, and next spring we'll get another proposal that'll keep going.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good.
Ms. Burke?
I was going to ask this question. I've said it to the city manager more than one time. When we do contract business with these companies, to me, the turnaround is just too long. Look like whoever we get, we should be a #1 priority for them to complete the job. Not only in transportation, I'm talking about throughout this whole city. The city staff, to me, hasn't done a lot of beginning and endings. It's too long between the beginning and the ending. And we're paying good dollars, and I think our taxpayers would expect a little more. I'm going to ask a simple question. Do we write things down when we're working with these contractors? How do you go about doing the job?
Yes, ma'am. So first step is to set a schedule with the contractor no matter what the project is. The second is to have regular progress meetings on that, as well as regular inspections on every critical piece of those projects, and then adjust accordingly depending on weather or unforeseen circumstances. Sometimes we have to look at how we contract in general. This contract is a good example. In the past, it was sort of 3 parties that were involved in resurfacing. We would do a resurfacing contract, and that basically included the milling and the paving. Then we had a separate contract for structure adjustment, and then city forces were doing base repairs. That's too many steps and involves too many parties to try and juggle them around. So what we've done is included the structure adjustments as part of this basic scope of work, and we'll likely include the base repairs. That way we have one party responsible from start to finish and to expedite that work with no additional scheduling from third parties.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have said that we have new people who are managing the city along with the city manager. So don't do what somebody else did. See how creative you can be.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scipio?
Just a question, because I forgot to ask this of you in my other questions. Of course, the East Ward is not on your list at all, on this paving list, because we had no funds at this time. But we have some, we just approved, thanks to you, some funds that are going to be for paving. And are they going to be considered fairly quickly, that they would then be coming to the council before the end of the year? Or are we going to have to wait for the next cycle of this repaving?
Councilmember Scipio, our intent was to put them in with the next round of bond paving projects.
Okay, and that will be?
January will be put out to bid.
So it will be in January?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for my residents, they just need to be very patient.
Yes, ma'am. We haven't forgotten about them, and we'll get them in
We are not forgotten that we will have some funds, and our roads will be resurfaced.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And for those in the audience who may be in the East Ward, the prior council member took the repaving money for the East Ward and spent it elsewhere. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it was reallocated somewhere else.
Reallocated.
Thank you.
Got a quick question. So I noticed that 4th Street from First to Peters Creek is on here. Dan's going to help share the cost on that with me, isn't he? From
That's
40 down to Peters Creek.
That hasn't been shared with me, but yes, sir.
We'll take that. We'll take it under advisement. Thank you.
We'll take that under advisement.
We will. Mr. Larson.
Could I have trivial pursuits and ask you, do you have any idea how many miles of paving we're going to deal with this in the next year? Just for the citizens to know that we are attacking the problem. Any idea at all? I mean, it's a long list, and in response to Mayor Pro Tem Burke's comment about how much work we're actually doing, it's a huge list of projects, and of course, it's scattered throughout the city.
Can we get that for the meeting Monday
Yes, sir.
night?
I think it's a significant amount of work, and the bond's going to work. Basically, our bonds are going to work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank y'all. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Sir, let us get to the open comment period, and I'll get you then. Please vote. All right. That was C15. Now C16.
Item C16, resolution awarding construction contract for Patterson Avenue streetscape and facade renovations located in the Northeast Ward.
Mr. Millett, can you please give us an introduction?
I just needed to ask a question. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I just needed, because I didn't see a map.
Yeah.
I needed to know, Councilmember, where are we talking about on Patterson? That's all I wanted to know.
Give us the what part of Patterson's
Sure.
done.
This is immediately south of the Patterson-Glen intersection on the 2200 block of Patterson on the west side. It is a cluster of buildings that is on a triangle at Patterson, Glen, and Greenway.
Yep.
And this affects this project involves 7 of those storefronts. They're on the west side of Patterson.
Across from the dairy.
Right? Exactly.
So it's
exactly.
the development piece that we've been working on for a couple of years. Okay.
Yeah, I believe
Yes.
Mr. Evans Raleigh.
All right.
Well aware of that.
Okay.
Move for approval.
I do have one comment, and I have asked this of staff, and I've been assured of it. This is all nice to fix this up, but I drive by this every day, and my concern is the interior and the other parts of the building. And I just hope, and I've asked this, and I've been reassured that these buildings are, in fact, usable. My concern is you fix up the facade, and it turns out the roof's missing. It's doesn't do any good. And these buildings have been, to me, vacant for many, many, many years.
10 years.
So I just assume that we have, because I've been assured that we did our work and that these buildings are in fact in reasonable condition inside, so that if front's fixed up, there will be rentable. I just want to get that comment on the record. Mr. Raleigh.
I will say that the interiors of these properties will require additional work. They're not characterized in a usual way.
Yeah.
I think the idea is to improve the facade such that it will entice someone to come in and make the requisite frontages in this stretch that do house businesses that are
Yeah.
operating. And so we're hoping to promote additional occupancy in other currently unoccupied frontages.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, everything you said I'm agreeing with, and I've talked deep with Mr. Raleigh concerning this. We have been living with this a long time. And to do what's to be done will make a change. But we need to make sure that the people who get involved with us, that they're able to go into a building. If not, you have slums right back again. So we're looking at the facade. Also, with the people who own these facilities, they were in agreement, but I don't think they really care, tell you the truth. It's just something they got in a predominantly black area that's just there. They don't mind the ISO. I look at it every day, too. And it's an ISO. And I said one of the things I would criticize is that when we got a contractor, whether they are diverse, whether they are black, we are not going to hold back and let them take their time, in which I had a criticism. Whoever we had gotten in the beginning, to me, was not committed to do the job from A to B in a professional way. And I do believe we've gotten someone new, because we're not, just because we're a minority neighborhood, we're not going to allow them to misstep. And if they can't get in line, we just don't want them. We want the contractors who will do the job and complete the job.
Because the next block west, I guess, they tore down and redid it. There's I think a gas station in there and a store. It's where the shoe store used to
Right
be.
there on the corner of, it's on the corner of Glen and Patton.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Ms. Scipio, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess because I'm not familiar with this project, so I have just a couple of questions. Who owned the buildings? Do we own them as a city?
No.
Mr. Bellick, can you comment on the owners? How many
Sure.
are?
I believe the number is 5 owners that own the 7 different storefronts. We have been in touch with all of them throughout the project, and they have signed off on the city's participation in the project. So they are aware. They've been sent the design. So they have been included in this throughout the project.
And may I just say this?
Yes, ma'am.
It took a lot of effort from the city. They worked very hard to get those 5, if it's 5, to even try to come in to work with us. And they kept pressing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today with this project. Because, like I say, they really don't care.
One more comment. Again, that's the neighborhood I grew up in. And I always tell you, all of you, that when my parents moved to that community in 1964, it was a thriving, viable community, no different than Ardmore or anywhere else. And unfortunately, again, when, civil rights, white flight, all the white folks moved out and all the black folks moved in. My family was the second to move on our street. And those buildings was Dr. O.G. Harrison. There were optometrists, there were cleaners, there were furniture companies, owners, hair salons, drugstores, across from the Sealtest Dairy Bar, which saw a constant flow of people from all over the county every day. The Etna, where the hot dog stand is, Mr. Smith, Phyllis Smith's daddy, owned that service station. The bank, the Wachovia, the little general store was built. The community shoe shop was added next. It was the service station, the movie house, the restaurants. It was a thriving, walkable community.
Yeah.
And it all went away, I would say, in the 80s. Okay? So in order to bring back the vibrancy of our African-American communities, folks, right, wrong, and different, we're going to have to spend some money. And anyone, and I know all the money is in a big pot, but again, if we look at the history of how this city has invested in our neighborhoods versus all the other neighborhoods, it's time for us to reap some of these benefits. So if anybody got in a complaint, you know all of our emails. We're getting a lot of emails these days. Continue to engage with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Burke?
I would like to say that we've had some churches, Phillips
Chapel.
a very expensive church. We've had, is that St. John? Very expensive church, and Mount Pleasant. They have made a lot of improvements on Glen. Now we sent to your committee, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, we sent that where the theater is located. We've tolerated that Ritz too long. And the chairman of the city manager over this made me aware that you gave that family a little bit longer. And they've had this many years, which I didn't think you should have given them another second. But since you've given them, Madam, I expect when it comes to your committee, if they don't step up and do what they're supposed to do, I expect your committee to do what it ought to do.
And we shall, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, because that's where we get that investment.
And that's right around the corner from this.
Yes, it is.
Okay, can I get a motion on this, please?
I think it's already.
We already have a motion. Do we have a second?
I think it is.
I don't jump in with these, but I'm going to say second. They tried to outdo me, so I don't think you had a motion.
I think we got everything done. Let's see. The computer is not quick today. Okay, everybody please vote. Okay. Who hadn't voted?
It's locked.
It's unanimous? Okay. Well, can you get it off the screen?
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Bingo.
Last one I got is C22.
Item C22, resolution authorizing an agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for University Parkway Sidewalk Project located in the Northeast Ward.
I just wanted you to make them aware of what's going on.
Ms. McCullough, why don't you tell us what's going on this project?
Good afternoon again. This project is similar to a few others that are on the agenda. It is to install sidewalk on University Parkway from Robinwood Lane to Chatillon Drive. It is one of the projects which we had matching funds approved in the 2014 bond, but we needed to pursue getting federal funding through our STPDA projects through our MPO. So the federal funding was secured. The matching funds are available. We're also moving ahead with trying to hire consultants to do the design, and so we've entered into or requesting your approval to enter into contracts with NCDOT in order to move ahead with these projects.
Okay.
I just want some information.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion on this one, please?
Have you moved? Okay. I'll make the motion.
All right. Somebody second. It is.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like we have one of those old dial-up internet.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Paper ballot.
All right, that's unanimous. Okay, that's for consent. That took longer. We only have 2 items on the general, so we will move with those. The first one, G1, if the secretary please read this one.
Item G1, discussion regarding potential 2018 housing bond budget.
This is just for discussion today.
Yes, sir.
So why don't we discuss it?
Yes, sir. So, of course, we had the election back in November. Citizens approved a variety of uses for bond money. Included in that initiative were $10 million for affordable housing. When looking at how to construct a proposed budget, of course, we again referred to the recently completed housing study and needs assessment, and I outlined some of the primary objectives that came out of that housing study that we were specifically trying to tie utilization of these funds to the implementation of those objectives. In addition, and as I stated earlier, this also dovetails with the recently updated approved strategic plan by the council. And so with that in mind, we have 6 items for consideration for that budget. The first being $2.5 million, which we would propose be used for targeted acquisition and site preparation. This would include utilizing city-owned land. So if you'll recall earlier this year, City Attorney Angela Carmen brought a proposal about how we might utilize surplus city land for affordable housing. Of course, that was in a draft form, and she will be coming back to you all with some other details later this year. But looking ahead, we were also looking at how we might be able to tie those recommendations for utilization of surplus city property, along with possibly doing some targeted acquisition of tax foreclosed property, which would require us, of course, working closely with the county. And we will have that opportunity through the engagement that we will have with the Center for Community Progress, because their work focuses on how you handle vacant, abandoned, deteriorated properties and tax foreclosed properties. So we're looking at how we leverage some of this work that we already are undertaking. So we would look at doing targeted acquisition, site preparation, and also looking at how we target the utilization of these funds in targeted development zones. And the criteria for those zones we would certainly create so that when we actually do an investment of dollars, do this acquisition, we're trying to do it in a way that reaches both scale and impact. I think it's important that when we look at how we invest our dollars, that we actually be able to start to see the impact of those city investments. So if we were creating targeted development zones, really targeted zones, I think we would have a greater opportunity to achieve impact, achieve scale, and also be able to leverage additional investments that could also help with that impact. We would also propose looking at creating an employer-assisted housing program in these same targeted development zones, and looking at partnering with some area employers and maybe having like a participation fund. The city put in so much, the employers put in so much, and that will help to promote first-time home ownership, first-time buyers and home ownership. Then we would look at another $3.5 million as actual incentives to couple with any land that we might contribute to a project to also be used in those targeted development zones to really help push development, but also by making that contribution along with that land, we could drive the requirement that there be affordability across the income continuum. So right now, I know a lot of times we talk about 80% and below, but many times that does not get us at that affordability level at 30% of area median income or 50% of area median income. And so by having additional cash that we could put in a potential deal, then one of the requirements with whomever would develop in partnership with us would be to create a mix of incomes that include the market all the way down to potentially 30% AMI. Of course, we would like to continue with the TURN program, and here we are proposing another $2 million of that bond money be used for the TURN program, which would also include the administrative costs for those dedicated staff people who work the program. Then we're also looking at, we're estimating $750,000 to support our enhanced code enforcement activities. Of course, one of the items that was on the consent agenda was the new software that we are looking at procuring. If you recall, the current system that we have is 22 years old. It's obsolete. It is in dire need of being replaced. And so using that enhanced code enforcement software, as well as more targeted work around vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties, again, in tandem with our work with Center for Community Progress, those funds would help to underwrite that. And then lastly, as we have already approved the application of the For Everyone Home opportunity, this would be money that covers the match, as well as how we implement and develop some of that housing that is long-term affordable and actually put in the, developments that really kind of help to hold the tide against displacement.
Okay. This is just for information. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Larson, we'll just start with you.
Thank you. For those of us less informed, could you talk to me a little bit about the AMI and what that actually means? What are our thresholds when we talk about 80% or 30% for the public? What salaries or income levels are you really talking about?
So 80% of AMI gets you, for a family of four, about $46,000 thereabouts. When you're talking 30% AMI, you're talking teens, low 20s.
15, that's what I was thinking about. We're spending a lot of money, you're projecting a lot of money on the TDZ, the Targeted Development Zone, 6 million, 6.2 million out of the total amount. Could you describe to me or provide maps or what the criteria for establishing those zones will be? When will we see what constitutes a development zone and the boundaries of those zones?
We could probably put together a rough map for you in roughly 30 days. Part of that is tied to what we do with our neighborhood revitalization strategy areas.
Right.
Part of the thinking here is we have turn areas, we have the NRSA,
Right.
then if we have our targeted development zones. So we want to get a sense first if we have a go on the NRSA, and then we can start to look at now how we find those targeted development areas. I can tell you some of the things that we would look at are access to transportation, especially transportation nodes, proximity to schools, services, job centers if possible. So those kinds of areas that lend themselves to really leveraging community assets that make it easier to improve the quality of life for residents.
So if I may, on turn districts also, those are not hinged to the AMI system, are they?
The turn districts
Turns are not.
No.
And I know we've had some discussions about boundaries of turn, and turn's been around now for a couple of years.
Yes.
And are we going to be reevaluating how we decide what houses are eligible for turn? Are we going to still be locked in corrals of turn districts like we are for the TDZs?
I want to make sure I'm
You've
understanding
got zone,
the
right
question.
now we have zones of eligibility for
We have
turn.
neighborhoods.
Right.
Mhm.
And if you fall outside that line, you're not
Yeah.
eligible for a turn grant. And
Right.
it sounds like we're doing much of the same thing with the TDZ zones now. We're creating zones for TDZ. And what I'm particularly concerned about, and what I've experienced somewhat in the South Ward, is those bounds are not, those boundary lines preclude, I think, some eligible buildings that fall a block or two outside of those zones. And I want to be careful as we look at how we draw our lines and our boundaries and all of this, that we are clear that we're trying to accomplish, that we are not eliminating potential projects that would be compatible to the overall intent of the grants.
Absolutely. And part of the thinking with the targeted development zones, again, is how do we get more overall bang for all of our bucks? So where we have turn operating in certain neighborhoods, you have your NRSA that covers some areas, then the targeted development zones would give us an opportunity to develop in other areas that may not fall within turn or the NRSA.
Makes good sense. I understand that. I'm just my concern about how hard the boundaries are and how we establish those.
Sure.
Any other comments? Mr. McIntosh?
I don't envy your task going forward, Assistant City Manager, looking forward. There's an awful lot of stuff in play. There are a lot of balls in the air. This council has said that it's the number one priority twice now, at the most recent strategic planning session, that affordable housing is our number one concern.
Yes, sir.
We've got opportunity zones somewhere out there floating in the ether that we're going to try to capitalize on. We've got this housing study that we just did. I think the For Everyone, that timing is very fortuitous because we're formulating things as we go along, and I think that technical expertise will be really valuable to us.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we do pay attention to the processes that we use as the city and how they impact the development community as far as costs are concerned.
Sure.
So the utility department, Courtney Driver and Aaron King, and has pulled together a bunch of people to talk about what are the real impacts of what we send down when you're trying to build a $150,000 house.
Sure.
So stormwater impacts that heavily, utilities impact that heavily. We need to be mindful of sort of everything that we do as a city and how that can impede producing houses that people can afford to buy.
Absolutely.
And to rent, because we're talking about the same thing. So
Absolutely.
I don't envy you your task. It's very complicated, but I do think that every city department needs to be conscious of the fact that this is our number one stated strategic plan and goal. So.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
For that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
To follow up with Mr. McIntosh, Councilman, when we look at this city and we look at the people in the city, and you're talking about something that you talk with utilities, are you aware of the utilities concern?
Yes, ma'am, we're part of the work group.
So then everybody's communicating, so we'll know. But when you look at this city, we're going to have to do something. If not, then areas like Councilman Adams came out of, her mother and father made big sacrifices to put them in a neighborhood that they thought would be a good neighborhood. But when absentee landlords, some of them same people, realtors came in, they destroyed our neighborhoods. So we're the mess we in because maybe we don't have the plan that you're talking about. Because if we did, then maybe this neighborhood could have maintained. And then it was simply beautiful. And then the neighborhoods that were not as up, then some of what you're talking about could have been done to save. As I've said to Councilwoman Scipio, in the east and northeast, and even part of the north ward, all you're doing, all we see, people without the love we have for where we live and intend to live, coming in, assaulting, attacking, destroying areas that are good. When some of the people ride through our neighborhoods, they're amazed that we have the kind of beautiful homes we have. How in the world did you all do that, knowing that these banks was charging us more interest on the dollar back then? How did you all? We made many sacrifices. That's how we did it. And I think, Mr. City Manager, with the staff you have, it's important. With the Assistant City Manager, Logan Ford, to make sure the staff and everybody will do everything to preserve and bring our neighborhoods back. I carried Mr. Lawson through my neighborhood. He talked about all these beautiful homes. Can you imagine what a black man and a black woman had to do to get money from the bank? We even had banks to insult us. I had one to say to my husband and I, we were not 30 years old when we went to get our loan. The man sat there and he looked at me, and I knew I was neat and clean. He said, we can't give you a loan. Why, she could have another baby, like I was some animal sitting there. And when we walked out, I said to my husband, I said, you see how rude that man was? He said, we will pass that one. And we went further. He went to a bank. He was walking. He went into the one over there on that Presbyterian church. What street is that?
Cherry Street. Cherry.
And there was a bank there. He went in and he talked to that man. The man said, well, bring your wife back. And we got a loan. But he could have been discouraged. And some of you who come to this city, do you know us who stayed in this city? The years that we came here and we stayed, we moved into the neighborhoods, even in the area around 14th Street. Different sized houses, other size, but people, the profession didn't stop us from working together and respecting where we live. So it's time to try to bring us back, to give us a more livable place to come and go.
Yes, ma'am. That's our hope.
Okay. Ms. Adams.
I just want to say that the Community Development Department, as well as Ms. Newman, Ms. Logan Ford, including the Chair of Community Development and Housing, we meet, talk, conference all the time. They understand, we got a chance to reinvent how we do housing and community development in Winston. We got new fresh eyes, new blood, new ideas. They're bringing their subject matter expertise to the table, which is allowing us to move forward and think more, what if? And everything is done with the consciousness of the city, the citizens, and the council. Everything. Everything, you have a lot of us asking the what if questions, and how do we get this done? Now, for those of you developers and real estate people, I've been to enough.
Easy on the realtor.
I know, I've been to enough workshops in the 10+ years, and that's before I got on the council, as to what was happening to affordable housing all over the country. Again, we're in a crisis situation. So there may be occasions where we're going to be asking more of all of us. Again, public-private partnership relationships that we might not have had in the past because the city can't do it all. The federal government can't do it all. The state can't do it all. So this is where we get real creative and we start to put some things in place, working with all these different consultants to help us craft when we actually start to begin to create the brick and mortar of housing. And we're looking forward to that. And I think we've talked about, you're going to see some things very quickly. So I'm very satisfied and happy with the work that that department is doing.
Okay. I've just got a few comments, and this is just for information, and we'll move on to the next item. First off, I hope we can get in communion with the county on these empty lots. We keep waiting for someone to pay the back taxes and buy them.
Yeah.
If you were to build a house on them, we'd get property tax the next day.
Absolutely.
Number two, I do think you got this right. There needs to be a concentration here. You cannot go out and build houses at the prices we need to build them if you're building one here and one over there. They need to be, the construction company needs to be able to bring in, and when the backhoe's there, he can dig the footings for 2 or 3 houses for you. They have to put it on the trailer and move it somewhere else. So anyway, the last one, and you don't have to answer this today, but I do think we need to take a hard look at how much we can afford to spend per house. If you're building a house, I'm going to say it's $100,000, a minimum size house. Well, with $3 million, you can build 30 houses. We need 16,244 units. And if you divide that into 3 million, it's $187 a house. We could afford to give everybody a new mailbox. That's about it. So I do think we need to give a hard look at how much can we afford to spend per unit. And a unit can be different things. That might be an apartment, it might be a condo,
duplex,
it might be duplex,
density,
whatever. Yeah.
Tiny house.
And part of that would be, if it is being sold, that part of our cost would be taken out with the mortgage. But we need to really think through how much can we afford net to put into these in order to make a difference. It doesn't do any good if we go build 30 houses spread out over the city. You'd never see it.
Absolutely.
So anyway, but I think you got a great plan, and look forward to y'all putting meat on the bones and coming back.
Bringing it back.
Yes, sir.
All right?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to G2.
Item G2, information on previously approved job creation and economic development agreement between the City of Winston-Salem and S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation.
Okay. This item has been added fairly recently, and I will tell you, I was unaware that it was coming till fairly recently. I am going to give Ms. Scipio a chance to speak, and then I was going to ask if staff would like to make any comments. And Ms. Carol Davis is here, I believe.
Sitting there, over there.
I can't see anybody that's behind that podium.
Anybody over there against the wall.
Carol, I saw you walk in, but I didn't see you. Okay, we're glad you're here. And we'll be sure, I just want to let everybody know, and we'll give everybody a chance to speak, and we'll see where we are after that. So, Mississippi, if you want to introduce the topic, or Evan, if you want to speak first.
Looking at me, I'd be happy to,
All right,
to speak
Mr.
first.
Raleigh, you have the floor. And if the attorney would be ready, because I'm going to ask you where we are on everything from a legal standpoint. Go ahead.
Good afternoon again, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of the council and committee. So,
good afternoon.
This item is being brought to you for information this month as a request from Councilmember Scipio for this body to consider rescinding 2 previously approved agreements between the city and SG Atkins CDC. The first is an agreement related to the acquisition of properties within the East End footprint. And the second is a previously approved agreement to support a project management services position associated with the implementation of the East End Master Plan. And Chairman Clark, if you'll bear with me, I'll give you a bit of background.
You give us all you want. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So in September of 2016, the Mayor and City Council authorized funding for Atkins CDC to enter into contract to create a master plan for the East End area. That master planning process initiated in the fall, winter of 2016, took the better part of 2 years after some pretty significant involvement from the community, business owners, residents, and that plan was completed and unveiled to the community in August of 2018. And in addition to the funding that council approved for the completion of that master plan, at the time the mayor and council also authorized support in the amount of $60,000 a year for 3 years from the Housing Finance Assistance Fund to assist the CDC with capacity building and visioning implementation of the East End plan by hiring a real estate development project manager. So fast forward to June of 2018, the mayor and city council authorized the city manager at that point to enter into an agreement with the CDC to acquire commercially zoned properties and others as allowed by law in the East End footprint. That action also authorized the CDC to essentially access $3 million in 2014 economic development bond funding to support the acquisition and assemblage of those properties that fell within that footprint for the purposes of job creation and economic development. In September of 2018, the mayor and city council authorized a second 3-year agreement with the CDC, allocating, once again, $60,000 per year for 3 years, this time from the Economic Development Project Reserve Fund to support project management, real estate development services, again, for the continuation of activities associated with the implementation of the East End Master Plan. So to date, neither of these agreements and the ones that I'm speaking of, the sort of the re-up, the second of the 3-year $60,000 agreements, as well as the agreement for the use of that $3 million in economic development bond funding have not been executed. We have had conversations, ongoing conversations, particularly related to the use of that $3 million in bond funding with the CDC, and we are close to finalizing the language of that particular agreement. So Councilmember Scipio is bringing this item as a request in an effort to make those bond funds, the $3 million in economic development bond funds that were originally intended for the exclusive use of the CDC, available to a broader group of development partners that extend beyond just the East End and into the East Ward. And we'd also be, I guess, rescinding that second 3-year agreement because that, the $60,000 a year from the Economic Development Project Reserve Fund would be associated with the facilitation of using those $3 million in bond funds. So based on the direction that you all provide here, if you desire, we could bring an item for action on this that would do as I described, rescinding those 2 agreements to a future committee meeting.
Okay, if I could ask the second one, the $60,000 a year position, I think we called it a real estate development project manager or something. Has that contract been signed at all for any of the years?
Yes, the first one was signed, and we've actually.
Now, have we paid to the $60,000 for any years?
Yes.
First 3 years.
For the first 3 years, we've actually expended. So they're really 2 agreements. So the first, we're in essentially the 3rd year
of a 3-year plan.
Yes, 3rd year of the first agreement, contemplating the second, kind of the extension.
Okay, so we have paid for 3 years of a real estate development.
We've actually paid for 2.
2 years, okay.
Yes.
But 3 coming up.
Yes, the final disbursement on that original contract has not yet been made.
Okay. And then as far as the contract on the $3 million, if I remember discussing this, Mr. Garrity, it was my understanding that as they came forward with acquisition opportunities, we were going to see those again to approve them specifically. Is that right?
Chairman Clark, the actual resolution didn't require that, but I'd indicated, and the city attorney was going to make sure in the contract that it did require coming back to this council before we purchased it.
Okay, and have we been presented any yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay, I got it now. All right. Ms. Scipio, is there anything you would like to add before I allow other people to speak?
Oh, yes. The contract, did you want to hear some of the overview of the contract?
Certainly, okay. So as I mentioned, the contract, and the contract I'm speaking of, is specifically the one related to use of the $3 million in bond funding. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, that contract, we have been in negotiation for several months now with Atkins on the language and we are close to reaching some agreement on that. As it is currently envisioned, the CDC, as the city manager indicated, would be afforded up to $3 million to acquire property in the footprint. They would be, we would sort of authorize that, bring it to council on a acquisition by acquisition basis. The CDC would be allowed to access funding to support property maintenance, certain allowable expenses associated with property maintenance of properties that they would acquire. Those allowable expenses include, just as an example, things like attorney fees, title insurance, trash, dumpster rental, anything that would be associated with the maintenance of a particular property. So it could be that they acquire a vacant parcel. It could be that they acquire a parcel that has a building on it. And so we've tried to spell out the allowable expenses. We also have put a cap related to how much of that $3 million funding they could use to support such expenses. As the language currently stands, we envision up to $250,000 for a total of 5 years. So essentially $50,000 a year for 5 years would be the limitation on the CDC's ability to access those funds for maintenance.
For just maintenance?
Yes, that would be just for maintenance. The other, I think, areas of to highlight, so in the event that the CDC sells a property to a developer, a prospective developer, making use of these funds, the CDC would reap a commission on the sale, and the amount of 15% is what has been prescribed. They would also, I think just quickly going back, in the event that the CDC were to acquire a building with occupants in it, with tenants in it, there is envisioned a cost share between the city and the CDC for maintenance of those properties that have tenants within them. So that revenue split, I think, as the language envisions, would be a 70-30 split, the CDC taking 70%, the city taking 30%, really just to cover, I think, the cost that the CDC would be incurring to maintain that property.
Does that include the rent? Let's say you buy a building someone's renting. Who gets the rent?
So that is it. That is
Okay.
it. That is it. The CDC would be required, so any property that is sold off would, again, have to be used for the purposes of economic development, job creation. So there would be a stipulation requiring job creation of a certain sort that is included in that language. The CDC obviously wouldn't be creating those jobs, but they would take on the burden of responsibility for reporting on the job creation that whoever essentially builds on that property does. That makes sense. And that, again, is to ensure that we see job creation out of the sales of the properties. The length of the agreement in totality is 10 years, or excuse me, 15 years. I think that's also an important point to note. The way that we have structured the language today, again, it'd be basically a 5-year contract with the CDC for use of these funds with up to 2 additional 5-year extensions. So really in totality, the CDC could have up to 15 years to acquire property in the footprint, and with the hope, of course, of creating development, job creation activity on those parts.
When you say job creation, if I'm going to build an apartment unit, does that count, other than the construction jobs?
If I would say that if there were commercial on, maybe if it was mixed use, you have commercial on the ground floor where you'd have kind of retail, commercial tenants, and certainly, but if it were just purely housing development, then no. That would not.
Okay, so we're really not after just pure housing development. We won't.
This
No.
is commercial.
Commercial.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And when did we approve this concept of the 3 million? What year was that?
That was September of 2008. Excuse me, June of 2018.
So a year ago?
Concept, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Raleigh? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Raleigh, from what staff can see, you and Ms. Slocum Ford, on what we voted on and approved and agreed on, was there anything non-compliant, unethical that this council did over the course of this process? Yes or no?
No.
Do we require others that we have dealt with the same process, whether it's Wake Forest, whether it's Wexford, whether it's the Innovation Quarter, any developers or whatever's goal of CDC, have we required them to do something different or have pulled back on an approval of an agreement or process? Have we ever done that before?
Councilmember Adams, no, not related to pulling back on agreement, not to my knowledge. We have required them to meet certain.
I understand that. That's a contract. It's
Right.
a contract. But have we ever done what is being asked of us now?
Not to my knowledge, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Burke?
Even though we may not have asked others to do it, when a council person comes in, I'm not having a discussion with anybody concerning this, but when a council person comes in and has an opportunity to evaluate things that's going to take place in the ward, like if I leave tomorrow, I'm going to be living hope, and I'm not leaving.
Good. You're not leaving just for the day.
Yeah, you know, Father has it's already written. But there are going to be some changes that maybe this is different that I initiated, that maybe the new person would have some other changes that they would want. All I'm saying, I don't think it's nothing in cement. If it was in your ward, his ward, that when someone brings something new to us, if it's legally right, they have every right to question as the individual, council person. And you would go back and find through the years, searching the minutes, that we may have changed some things. When I first got elected 10 years ago, they had certain things for the community development areas. They left the northeast ward out. And there were several of them didn't want Mr. Russell to have anything, but we sat with the mayor and we changed back so that we could be equally given what needed to be given. Maybe that's not the same kind of situation, but they made changes with that. I don't know how much in print it was of cement that it could not have been. I'm just saying, as an elected official, if I became the official in this area, I'd want all consideration and respect to be given to me in my ward, and I'd be careful how I stepped into somebody else's.
Anyone else? Mr. McIntosh?
This is for Evan. Is it appropriate to go into what the specific sticking points are on the negotiations of the current contract?
Sure, I can, Councilmember McIntosh, I can tell you, I think probably we've had a couple. I think the biggest sort of, I won't call them sticking points, but topics of discussion have certainly been around the holding cost, what would be considered reasonable, allowable. I think that has probably been the biggest of the topics of discussion. Just trying to determine how much of the body of this money should be set aside essentially to support holding costs.
And you feel like those differences will be ironed out to your satisfaction, i.e. our satisfaction?
I think, you know, we've arrived at a place I think that is a reasonable position. I think, but I would say
Sounded like a lawyer.
Sound like a politician.
I'm serious.
All right, let me move.
Step sidewalk.
Let me move to the next one.
right.
In the first contract, were there performance milestones that had to be met?
for the
The initial.
60. There were not explicit performance standards in that contract. I think that is something that in looking at the second, we are building in.
Right, okay. Something that you said raised the hair in the back of my neck when you talked about commissions. Having just sat through 8 hours of continuing education for my real estate license, I know at one point the CDC was not a legal real estate entity, and as such cannot be paid a commission on a real estate deal. So I'd like some clarification on that moving forward as to whether that is still a situation. And then just on the extensions, are the extensions automatic or are they subject to review?
The extensions are subject to approval by mayor and council.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Davis, I haven't forgotten you. We'll get there soon enough. Mr. Larson.
Yes. Let me go back to some basics. We're going to basically buy $2.75 million worth of property. Is that correct? By the time you deduct the $250,000 out of the $3 million we've got 2.7 to purchase property. Is that the amount of money? And so when we start buying the property, there will be a commission rendered of, right now they're talking about 15% commission on the acquisition of that property.
On the disposition, on the sale of the property by the CDC to a developer.
To a seller. Yes. So that when we actually acquire the property, that title will be owned by the CDC or by the city?
It'd be the CDC.
The city will own the property at that time?
We would not. It would be the CDC.
CDC will own the property at that time. And when they sell the property, that money goes where?
So the proceeds, assuming that it's, the proceeds would come back to the city less the
closing costs, whatever.
Right. Commission,
15%.
closing costs.
15% at that point, and whatever supplemental costs you were talking about, some maintenance costs maybe or whatever, because you're including attorney fees, title searches, and whatever in the attorneys or in the cost. So that money will come back into where? Into our general revenue, into the bond funds, or it won't be recycled back into the neighborhood, in other words, per se.
Councilman Larson, the proceeds would come back into a holding account. The proceeds, I think the mayor and council would need to determine how they would like to use those funds going forward. So that would have to be a separate conversation, essentially, about what to do with those recycling funds.
So the negotiation of purchasing a piece of property, all that hardcore stuff of dickering down the owner to get a reasonable price, that is the responsibility of the CDC to do that?
Yes, that's correct.
And they have the skill set to do that?
Yes, my understanding is that they do.
But they do not get a commission at that point in time until they actually sell the property?
That's correct.
Okay. I just have a few questions, and some of these Ms. Davis can address as well. To me, I see kind of a different sides to the same coin. At the same time, you're accumulating property, and from the developers that I know, that is a very involved business, because the piece of property you want maybe 5 or 6 owners, and to accumulate all that is critical to the success of the project. At the same time, I don't think you want to accumulate a lot of property unless you have interest in it. So I'm struggling with where's the balance between accumulating property and having interested parties in it. My concern is we accumulate property and it's there forever. And I may even look to Mr. McIntosh, who's got some experience here, but it seems like to me there needs to be a balance there, that somebody needs to express an interest. I would like to do such and such. If I need 5 acres and at least so much has to be street front or whatever it may be, however they define it. The other piece that I struggle with is, and this is why I asked about the apartments, is my guess, and I don't know this, but I think history would support it, that whoever builds in there is going to want some help building it, whatever that may be. And for $3 million, I don't think we're talking about a lot of projects. If we're looking to help subsidize putting up brick and mortar for retail or whatever it may be. And so I don't think that the comment there's $2.7 million for land. My concern is somebody could come in and want to put up a $15 million project, may want $5 million from us, and so you can do one project. So those are kind of the questions I struggle with there. Ms. Davis, we've given you, let you sit quietly. Would you please come up, and I'm going to give you the floor. Anyway, I just offer those questions to the staff because, and one data point I would like, we own that land where Angola finally, CDC built those nice apartments. And
757.
they got a number to them, yeah. They're very nice, but I think that land was there for quite a while, and I know the agreement we have when we extended it 2 or 3, 4 times.
We did.
Yep.
I would like to know how long we owned that land from the beginning to when we sold it, because I think that may be an indication. Anyway, Ms. Davis, if you give your name and address for the record, and then I will give you the floor to make whatever comments you'd like.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Davis, Executive Director of Atkins Community Development Corporation at 1922 South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Good afternoon, Chairman, Mayor Pro Tem has left the room, but council and committee members.
Good afternoon.
Frankly, our board of directors was disappointed to hear the news that this agreement might be rescinded. As you know, we did work from, I guess it was January of 2017, actually, through mid-2018 on the East End Master Plan. It was a pretty robust process, and we had, as a result, asked the planning board to endorse that plan in about September of 2018, and then came to the council in November of 2018. And since that time, we have turned our attention to acquisition, property acquisition. We do have a land acquisition plan that was submitted to council at the time we discussed getting funding to do land acquisition. And some of the harder to develop properties that we've looked at since that time and made offers on, some unsuccessfully, was the East Winston Shopping Center, the Burger King, the gas station on the corner of 5th and MLK, and we've talked with the...
That's the gas station with the tire store there now?
Yeah, it's not really a gas station.
It's a tire store.
It used to be a gas station. We were in conversation with the State Employees Credit Union, and then also with the doctor's office at the corner of 5th and Cleveland. Right, right. Dr. Weston.
5th and what?
I believe that is 5th and Cleveland.
Cleveland, yeah.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Cleveland. Thank you. And others. The daycare center that's been empty several years. We've reached out to all of those since November 2018 when the plan was endorsed. We've had contact with all of those property owners. And in fact, while this negotiation over terms of the agreement has been in process, we actually made 2 offers to the owners of the East Winston Shopping Center unsuccessfully. And it is a property that has about, 20 different owners, at least. All
How about
at
the older
different
shopping
amounts.
center?
Shopping center at the corner of New Walkertown Road and
The side where the Burger
MLK.
King is.
Yeah, just right down from Burger King, right down there.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right.
There's 20 different owners?
At least.
Yeah.
Okay.
Minority partners,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
varying amounts. And then during those negotiations, the person who had been the main contact person passed away. And we were dealing with his estate. But having said that, I think the reason we felt like a long 5-year terms might be necessary to fully expend and then revolve these $3 million was because the holding period can be uncertain. You mentioned 757 North, but on Jason Thiel has been advising us on some things. He mentioned the Pepper Building and how long the downtown Winston-Salem partnership had to hold the Pepper Building and the expenses that they incurred while they held it and waited for someone to come forward, I think, which happened a couple different times. But on the Burger King, for example, we did have another fast food organization that wanted to come to that corner. still wants to come to that corner. But we have not been successful yet in any of our conversations with the Burger King Corporation, even though a Burger King franchise holder came to the planning board. I think that was last year. But, I mean, it's not like we're not doing anything. And I think that recently our board members, I know, have met with a gentleman who has over 30 years of land acquisition experience in very difficult markets. He has submitted his qualifications and wants to work with us. I think he could get the job done. He describes himself, unfortunately, as a shark. And it might take that to make the progress
as long as he's your shark.
that needs to be made. But yeah, we've tried since the plan was endorsed in November 2018 to make some progress ourselves. And we have come to the realization that we need professional sharks.
Ms. Davis, are any of your board members here?
Yes.
Could I ask the board member, I saw Mr. Younger's here. Okay, thank you for coming. Okay. Any questions for Ms. Davis? Mr. Bessie?
This may be beyond the scope of the conversation, and so just tell me that. But can you tell us how the East Winston Shopping Center ownership question became so complex?
I think when it was acquired, it must have been done as or when it was built, it must have been done as we have some papers from Attorney Ray.
R. Lewis Ray.
R. Lewis Ray, thank you, that show numerous investments from a variety of people that went into the acquisition and development of that shopping center. And it seems like it was done in a collaborative manner with many people putting in $2,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000. And so to unravel that or to partner with that group to do something else is pretty labor intensive.
Yeah.
So the original development was undertaken by a partnership as opposed to a corporation. These are not lien holders, these are actual part owners.
I'm not sure.
We can.
I'm sorry.
I've got a real estate question. I'll address that in a minute. Anything else, Dan?
No.
Ms. Burke, you have it.
I was going to say when Mayor Carpenter was the mayor of the city, Mrs. Newell was the councilwoman, and she, along with some people, decided they were going to put a shopping center there. R. Lewis Ray was the attorney, and they were even paying as small as $5, talking about a share. And they took that business to Washington. Mayor Carpenter on the plane with Alan Jones working in that department, they had to write down the proposal trying to get it to Washington on the airplane to complete it. In fact, some people made a big joke of East Winston about doing business. It was just a mess. And some of the people who owned, they died without even getting anything back. And like Mayor Carpenter said to me, he said, now, they're not going to get nothing $5 shares, but somebody got into their brains and made them feel that they could have a shopping center in East Winston. And as Attorney Davis said, they've changed so many people passed, and then they've changed ownership of it. And it's just been a loose something out there. In fact, it ought to be an insult to East Winston for us even having gone into something like that.
Okay. Mr. Larson, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. If you may go ahead. Thank you. That was very, very useful information. I have a couple of little questions. The East Winston plan, that was the East End plan, we're calling it. What did we pay for that? What was the expense of putting that plan together? Do you have any idea?
I think it was $90,000.
$90,000. A lot of work went into it. As you said, it was a very robust plan. Do you know what the estimates of the total cost for implementing that plan were? Were there any cost estimates that came out
implementation
of that plan? They didn't break down into millions. Millions.
She said hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions. And we've allocated $3 million today or back in October, whatever, to address it. So one of the questions was that I sort of had in sort of witnessing the downtown and how it's developed as the commercial is following residential. Why was the decision made to focus on land acquisition for commercial development rather than housing stock? Within the whole of that plan, which was fairly significant. A decision was made that we're going to focus on the Fifth Street corridor as a commercial corridor, and that was given priority. And I think one of the questions sort of being raised here is land banking and acquiring land and how we spend money. You got a $100 million project here. You know, how do you best put the dime on where it's going to make a difference? So could you just explain a little bit as the priority of, as to within that master plan, why this $2.7 million needs to be spent in this particular way?
Well, obviously, I think housing and commercial development are equally important. You know that commercial development follows housing development.
Right.
And we are, there are some people in that target area who are in charge of now probably about 130 units of housing. The housing is difficult because that's not likely to change hands too much in terms of the apartment complexes multifamily complexes that are in this target area. You've got Beacon Properties with their units that they're going to retain ownership of. You've got the Phi Omega chapter of the sorority. They're going to retain ownership of their apartments. First West End LLC, that has been formed by United Metropolitan Church, has taken control of a couple hundred units that they're not going to relinquish control of. So those are all multifamily housing projects within that area, including Holland Homes, held by First Baptist Church. We don't foresee those changing hands. We see our role in those projects as supportive or help to facilitate in any way we can. What was not spoken for was how would these parcels be assembled in a way that would make them more easily accessible if a developer comes in, or make them more attractive. If a developer comes in and wants to invest, they don't want to go through the process of dealing with 50 different owners on one property. They don't want to come in and battle with the Burger King Corporation on getting a return phone call, which is hard to do. They don't want to come in and deal with cleaning up the gas station site on the corner of 5th and MLK. So just to kind of set the table, we felt it was necessary to take these funds and start to acquire, clean up, and just set the table so that when interested parties who are, they come to the table, then there's something to work with. That was the thinking.
If I may, and we're over my time, if I can make a suggestion.
Sure.
There is no contract yet, so we're not rescinding anything. I was going to suggest a couple things. One, I believe we are allowed to go into closed session for real estate issues.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon, Al Andrews. Yeah, you can go into closed session with regard to economic development matters.
Okay. I think, first off, I think it would be helpful for the council if we could go into closed session to discuss in detail the properties, for example, the shopping center and the Burger King and whatever else we can learn from it. I think that would be good information for us. The other thing, and this CPO, you've asked really to broaden this for the entire East Ward. To me, the question I'd like for the staff to address is, and the other one I'm thinking of, and there are probably many others, but at, I guess that's Old Walkertown Road and Waterworks or whatever it is, New Walkertown, that older shopping center. Yeah, it's near Lakeside, right down.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to do something there, what resources do we have available for that? And there may be others. I just want I know top of my head. So if we could get some information on that. The third item is, and I think Mr. Larson just mentioned this, normally retail follows housing. I'm not going to be surprised if some of the folks you mentioned that have housing may want to approach us for help on renovating what they have. I don't know if they are or not. But another question would be, if we do get approached for folks in this area, what do we can or cannot do as far as housing goes? Because I know the ones that United Metropolitan owns, look like to me a lot of them are vacant.
They are.
They are.
They all are.
By the way, I drive this every day because I have a secret way to get from 40 to downtown, and don't any of y'all tell anybody. But I get off, come right down. I guess that's 5th Street, and then I do some lefts and rights to get through all that. But anyway, Mississippi, I guess what I'm suggesting is let's get some more information. Nothing's been signed, so there's nothing to rescind at this point. But I would like more information on what has been done here so far, some more detail on it. And staff, y'all may need to look at that shopping center. Sounds like a
nightmare.
A nightmare.
Yeah.
Lawyers would love it. The rest of us would hate it. But if you've got 50 or 30 or 20 owners, you can't get 50 people to agree on what time it is. But let's get some more information and find out, are there other resources available? And I would like for someone to try to address the issue of this concept of land banking and how long it reasonably needs to be. For example, I didn't realize the daycare is empty. It seems like me, I've seen some folks out.
Well, I think recently there has been some activity there. Okay. It wasn't sold, though. I think it was.
But that's something we could do in closed session. Who owns it, et cetera, et cetera. As far as redevelopment, is that a case that you try to find someone to run a daycare, or are you looking to change the purpose of the building? So those type of questions. It would also maybe be good, as we're in the discussion, to get an update on, I do know we have about $2 million in the budget for the 5th Street renovations. If we could maybe get an update on that as well, I think that would be helpful. And I guess, Mississippi, what I'm saying is I think we all need to get a little more information, and we'll see where we go, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me. I just need to say that my interest in this is not against SGX. I think they've done a commendable job. I want us to be clear as a council, are we honoring our fiduciary responsibilities to the community? I don't know what has happened in the past, but I do know that given what this contract is, it doesn't seem like we're taking the money and using it to the best that we can. And we probably need to go over that a little more in closed session.
Yeah.
I do know that the East End is very important. I will like to go on record in saying that because of that plan, there are emerging, at least 5 people have come to me about developing projects, commercial projects in the plan. And I think that's phenomenal that we have that kind of interest. And these are multi-million-dollar projects. I believe they will eventually come to us, perhaps seeking some kind of support. But I also want it to be what we typically do. We fund specific projects. We know what our commitment is. We know where it is. My problem with the agreement that you made is that it's an open-ended book. There's no targeted project or sites that we can say, oh, we're going to invest on this site, that site. I love the fact that Atkins CDC is forming a coalition of groups that they mentioned to help with the plan. And perhaps that coalition could come back with a plan for what property definitely needs to be purchased. My biggest issue is I don't believe we should give groups money to create an asset, and we still have to pay the expenses on those assets that are no longer ours, including the property taxes. So if we buy the land, we have no taxes. We also then incur the expenses of owning that. So those are my biggest concerns about moving forward with the agreement, that there's just some things that are missing, and I don't know if we want to put ourselves in the position of paying for things that we normally would take care of if it was ours.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. With that,
I need to say
yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
As Attorney Davis knows, from day one, when she formed the corporation, we had a nice meeting, and I said, come to us with money. She wrote grants, and she came not empty-handed as a CDC. She's one of the strongest ones that we have in making sure that you have this. Also, I want to find out, when you mentioned the state employees, that building, they want to move.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if you go in there, and would that make them want to charge us more in moving? They've been wanting to move before we even started this project.
Yeah.
What would that do for you?
I think they're prepared to pay their own expenses.
Yeah, they are.
To develop a.
Yeah.
I know
They-
Mr. Roberts didn't like a split. He would have bought some things, but he wanted everybody to be in favor when he was head of it. Okay.
There is not a Public Safety Committee meeting this month, so if you're here for it, it's not going to happen. Come back next month. Yes, we did have a gentleman. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, my name is Gabriel Sign. I'm with Percent Construction Solutions. It's a company owned by my wife. And we bid on the resurfacing contract for the adjustment of structures. And it has been the council's wisdom in the past that structure adjustments be an item of work that African Americans could do in these contracts. Historically, no blacks were getting any of the city resurfacing contracts, zero. In order to combat that, council came up with the idea that it was anything in that contract that blacks could do. And it came up with the structure adjustments. My wife is the only African-American female in the city certified to do it. And on this particular contract, we submitted a bid to APEC Atlantic, and it was denied. And it was my understanding that from this bond money, that this was going to be local jobs created, everybody would have a chance to participate. It's not working out that way. It would put 14 people out of business, out of a job, put us out of business, to take the contract for structure adjustments and give it to a company out of Burlington or somewhere, a WBE company. I'm simply saying that since the council took that part of the contract out and our own company started to raise structures for the city directly, we have raised probably to date close to 3,000 structures. We have never held up the contractor. Out of this last contract we just did, it was about 700 structures. We had to go back and replace 9 out of almost 700. Always on time, done the job in a timely and professional manner from beginning to end. And I think to take bond money after it's been said that local companies would benefit, I just don't see it being right that this takes place. However, I spoke to the city manager last week about it, and he told me that the city couldn't force the contractor to take any particular subcontractor, which I know is true. However, the city could take that item out of the contract as it was done before. With that said, I would hate to see 14 people lose their job, and that if there's any way that because the structural adjustments is the first item of scope of work done in the project, if it's directly with the city, still wouldn't hold up the contractor, wouldn't impede the process one bit, because all the structures are inspected by the city first anyway. So it would be no delays because we're raising the structures separate from APEC Atlantic, as we have done in the past, and doing it directly for the city. Otherwise, if we leave it to the contractors, we just look at the historical record, they will not do the right thing. And part of the contractor's obligations is that he hires Section 3 residents from the city. And I look at his profile, and I'm sure the city can look at it as well. There are no African-American women on this payroll. Not out here in this streets, on city streets of Winston-Salem. You may have some in Greensboro, somewhere, but as long as I've been working there, have not seen an African-American female anywhere. And I think it's wrong that African-American business don't even have a chance to get started, even a chance to grow, if we get knocked down at every post. And I really don't expect the contractors to do it the right thing, but I would hope the people we have voted for here will. And I say that to say that my wife's company couldn't do this job. It's 955 holes on this particular contract. And I would be willing to say that we can do it, and we can do it in a timely fashion, as fast and as well as anyone.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Garrett, if you could get us a report back on this.
Yeah, we'll get you a report before the end of the week for Monday night.
All right. Thank you, sir. And the city manager will get us a report back so we can all kind of know what's going on here. Okay, Ms. Burke?
And I agree with the speaker. If we don't do it as a city, things will never happen for MWBEs. And we're going to have to do it different than how we've been doing, Mr. City Manager. Because all we've done throughout these years, since I've been the one umpteen years, I'll say, I've seen MWB be a failure in this city. At one time, they had excuses, saying how lawyers had interpreted, and then each time we see them being less considered in this city, and no disrespect to the councilwoman, but along with Councilman Montgomery, that was one, and I've introduced it. He was one of our pushers, and also coming with a little more unique things that we need to do. And so I would expect for you to know that we're just as concerned as if though all of us feel that this is not the right way, the fair way.
Good, thank you. And on the previous topic, if anyone else has any concerns or questions, please address them to Mr. Garrett or Mr. Raleigh, and we'll get those. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.